In this form, the trope of rationality serves a powerful function. By appearing as something that emanates from each member of a society while also reflected within the law itself, it appears to be the intrinsic ontological trait of human beings. As Judith Butler says, to establish a set of norms that are beyond power or force is itself a powerful and forceful conceptual practice that sublimates, disguises, and extends its own power play through recourse to tropes of normative universality. In this form, the trope of rationality serves a powerful function. As I said, it appears to emanate from each member of a society, and so it becomes an intrinsic trait of human beings. And so rationality is more than a shared set of understandings, procedures, framework. It's the ontological cloth by which one can be recognized as human, not only by others, but also by sovereign authority and law. And so if rationality is understood in this way, then it would seem, it also makes sense, that unless one accepted the rational premises which undergird a particular community and shared the traits which belong to members of that community, then one is precluded not only from mere membership, but from the acknowledgement or recognition that one is human as well. From the perspective of a world that is governed by nation states, the precluding of such recognition reveals most vividly the expression of an intrinsic sovereign authority, a sovereign expression of violence and coercion, which is crucial to the successful maintenance and reproduction of a liberal state. Laclau and Mouffe respond that these are attempts to limit and manage the undecidability of heterogeneity, in order, quote, to make way for actions and decisions that are as coherent as possible, even, unquote, even as they also point out that such a management can never be complete or successful. Coherence is the aim of a sovereign agenda that's motivated by the impulse to preempt the chaos of a potentially unmanageable population. And so while coherence may be read on the one hand as an ordered intelligibility, that is, as an explicit political agenda that constitutes what is reasonable, rationality as the explicit condition of a free society, what the majority wants, hegemony, the outcome of procedures of negotiation and accommodation, is pluralism and toleration. But what they term undecidability is not the messiness that lies at the boundaries of the political. Rather, undecidability, and this comes out of a phrase that Derrida uses to say that laws, it calculates and it's random, so it doesn't actually make judgments about people. It's just undecidable, and then it just randomly targets somebody. And so that's what they're referring to. But rather, so I said what they term undecidability is not the messiness that lies at the boundaries of the political. Rather, undecidability is really the intrinsic fear embodied by sovereignty. It's the fear of the unruly, which threatens to wreak havoc on an order, the established laws and norms of a polity. And those laws and norms not only support, but guarantee the force of sovereign power. So the implied solution is to coerce others to prove that they're one of us, rather than accepting them under the stated conditions by which people are allowed to enter the polity. Criteria such as deliberative rationality, cooperation, a commitment to equality and rights. And so here might be another way by which to understand the rationality which secures and undergirds the liberal framework. Rationality expressed as abiding by the rule of law is the stance of coercion which is designed to cohere, not just render intelligible, but to bring together a population while simultaneously excluding others. Rationality might then be understood as a moment of self-identification and recognition. And those who stand out, refusing or being perceived as refusing to acquiesce to the rationality of the majority, even if their refusal doesn't endanger the lives of others, then they stand to be marked as the enemy. As importantly, though, the capacity to identify the enemy presupposes the confidence to ask the question of the we, and the authority and legitimacy of being able to answer the question and preemptively and to enforce the answer. We know who the we is, in other words. It's not merely any population, ethnic, sexual, racial, who can ask and answer this question affirmatively. Rather, this power of the political emerges from law as the expression of sovereign authority, and hence is holding the power of enforcement. As Walter Benjamin suggests in his discussion of lawmaking, the sheer capacity to instantiate such distinctions gains its power of enforcement through the potential violence which is inherent in law. It's the conspicuous, strange practices of a minority population that constitute the threat, not necessarily to the lives of others, but to the coherence of a polity. While violence per se is not immediately manifested through such distinctions, by implication, the enforcement of acceptable practices, the exclusion of irrational practices, in quotes, as seen through the privation of legal protections or rights, serves to remind populations which side of the law one needs to be on, and by extension, which side of rationality one needs to take up and internalize. Muslims and their perceived defiance, bald lack of compliance as exhibited through their public visage, and the so-called devotion to strange and radically distinct cultural practices have rendered them vulnerable to the wrath of states around the world. Their madness, their unruliness, the ground of their racialization is not the illogic of the practices, but the perceived refusal to accept that the logic of secularism, of liberalism, should be the dominant reason that governs us. And so the state's wrath is directed towards those whose heterogeneous cultural comportment is seen as unbending and defiant, whether it's peaceful or otherwise. Thank you.